Solo Leveling, the title that shattered streaming records, but did it just shatter the rules of good storytelling as well? I spent 100+ hours tearing through 7 novel volumes, 200 webtoon chapters, and both anime seasons, and today I'm serving a 30-minute verdict. In this video, we undertake a critical analysis of Solo Leveling using the story analysis principles of Christopher Vogler and David McKenna. Stick around and you'll walk away with 6 quick tools to judge any power fantasy yourself. Ready to find out whether infinite leveling comes with a hidden cost? Then let's hit start. At its core, solo leveling is driven by an appealing theme of transformation from weak to strong. Encapsulated in the premise, even the weakest can become omnipotent. This explicit message is indeed declared within the story, and it sounds inspiring on the surface. However, the execution of this theme in the narrative is questionable. As critics have noted, Jin-Woo's rise to power is handed to him almost on a silver platter, with virtually no price paid or sacrifice made, aside from a few scratches early on. His meteoric empowerment isn't accompanied by meaningful consequences or moral trials. His ruthless pursuit of strength never leads to ruin, but instead results in unbroken success with no real downside. Consequently, the intended theme of the story blurs beneath the constant action. In other words, the anime fails to truly deliver on its initial promise of exploring a weakling who became a god of strength. Instead, it comes off largely as an empty power fantasy without a message.
Christopher Vogler reminds us that theme is the spine and nerve system of a story. If that spine is weak, the narrative loses its direction. This is exactly what happens in Solo Leveling. After the first few victories, it becomes unclear what the story is about anymore. It seems the creators care only about watching Jin-Woo's level counter go up. The plot lacks a strong moral core or new insight. The audience searches in vain for a profound takeaway or fresh idea. As the review puts it, much of Solo Leveling boils down to light wish fulfillment. Power falls into the hero's lap because it's convenient for the author. This is entertaining on a surface level, but beneath the shine, there is no heart. The story doesn't prove any thesis through its events, leaving us with no real lesson or emotional resonance. In short, the central theme of a weak person rising to the strongest is stated but not substantively supported by the narrative progression. Solo Leveling entertains, but it doesn't convincingly answer the implicit question of its premise. What does it truly mean to gain absolute power? And at what cost?
At the beginning of the story, Sung Jin-Woo successfully earns the audience's empathy. He is portrayed as an extremely weak, even pitiful young hunter, yet he shows courage and selflessness for the sake of his loved ones. Jin-Woo only accepts dangerous dungeon raids to earn money for his ill mother's treatment and to support his younger sister. The pinnacle of his weakness, and simultaneously of his bravery, comes in the double dungeon scene. When a group of hunters is trapped in a deadly temple, Jin-Woo, bleeding and terrified, still risks his life to save his teammates. In that critical moment, he accepts the systems contract, agreeing to become a player in order to avoid death. This choice serves as a kind of call to adventure and crossing of the threshold that kickstarts his hero's journey. The audience views Jin-Woo's supernatural salvation as a well-earned reward for his suffering and sacrifice. From then on, watching this downtrodden loser steadily gain strength and confidence is genuinely satisfying. Each level up feels justified because we remember what he went through at the start. Transforming from a humble, frightened boy into a hardened, resolute leader, Jin-Woo's wins deliver a catharsis, especially when the bullies who once mocked him get their comeuppance. On the surface, the hero realizes our dream of justice, a world where effort and endurance are rewarded with real power. Such an external journey, from weakest to strongest, is inspirational. It suggests that anyone could rise above their former self if given the chance.
俺はな、絶えずレベルアップしてんだよ。
However, behind Jin-Woo's spectacular outer transformation, there is only a faint trace of an inner character development. After a few victories, the hero starts to seem less like a real person. He is hardly ever troubled by doubts, fears, or moral dilemmas. His initial motivations quickly fade from the story's focus once Jin-Woo becomes wealthy and powerful. No new, deeper goal emerges to replace them. Beyond the abstract aim of becoming stronger, he is effectively grinding levels for the sake of levels. As David McKenna astutely teaches, nothing moves unless someone wants something. Early on, Jin-Woo's desires were clear and relatable: family welfare and personal survival. But by the midpoint of the story, he has obtained everything he needed. The conflict of desire dissipates, and the dramatic engine stalls. At that point, nothing truly significant remains at stake for the character. His life is no longer in danger, his loved ones are safe, and he exhibits no inner need or vulnerability going unaddressed.
必ず
This lack of internal trials renders Jin-Woo a rather flat character. He never really experiences moments of weakness where he must reconsider his values or pay a steep personal price for victory. The writers essentially spare him any hard choices or costly mistakes. Jin-Woo always chooses the path of strength, and he never falters or suffers consequences for it. Christopher Vogler emphasizes that the emotional power of a story comes from the hero's inner transformation. In Solo Leveling, the transformation is mostly external, from scrawny kid to muscular dark knight, whereas internally, Jin-Woo changes very little, aside from becoming more cold-blooded. The emotional arc is unfortunately missing. The hero impresses us with his abilities, but doesn't make us feel deeply for him. We might cheer for his triumphs, but we seldom worry for him or share his sorrow, because he experiences no genuine grief or doubt on screen. As a result, even after dozens of episodes alongside the protagonist, the viewer may feel a curious detachment. It's hard to form a strong emotional attachment to Jin-Woo as a person when his characterization is almost algorithmic, devoid of internal conflict. The hero's inner journey, which usually lends a story its meaning and poignancy, is minimal here. Solo Leveling delivers on adrenaline, but not on emotional depth.
駆られる覚悟ができてるはずだよなって聞いてんだ。
One key storytelling principle is the use of polar opposites, placing extreme values or states in conflict to generate drama. Tension rises when a narrative oscillates between two poles: order versus chaos, faith versus cynicism, victory versus defeat, and so on. If one scene starts at one pole, the next should move toward the opposite pole, so that the audience feels an internal pull as the story progresses. In Solo Leveling, the initial conflict clearly establishes such a polarity: weakness versus strength, the underdog versus the elite hunter society. Jin-Woo begins as the weakest in a brutal world ruled by powerful monsters and high-ranking hunters. In the first dungeon, his helpless party faces an overwhelming threat, a stark contrast between human frailty and the godlike wrath of the statues. This first act sets up a promise to the viewer that the story will be about the hero overcoming a colossal imbalance of power.
お前を殺すのはお前自身だ。
At first, the direction of the conflict's evolution fulfills that promise. Together with Jin-Woo, we climb the ladder of power while the enemies grow ever more formidable. The plot is constructed as a constant upward trajectory, much like a video game. Every new level brings another challenge. As soon as the hero defeats E-rank monsters, stronger foes of rank D, C, and beyond emerge. The stakes keep rising in tandem with his level. This provides a continuous sense of progress and escalation. The moment Jin-Woo grows stronger, an even mightier enemy appears, restoring a measure of balance to the struggle. The structure feels like a roller coaster, ascent after ascent, with only brief lulls before the next climb. The viewer lives on adrenaline, eagerly anticipating whom the hero will conquer next and what reward he will gain. Each major battle shifts the status quo. For example, when Jin-Woo defeats a dungeon boss and takes its shadow into his army, the balance of power clearly swings in the hero's favor. These rapid turnabouts hold our attention. Every scene ends with a new deal or condition for the story's world, sustaining intrigue. In essence, the first half of Solo Leveling skillfully energizes its conflict by continuously boosting the hero's might and introducing corresponding threats. The audience feels the thrill of progress. Just as Jin-Woo has risen, a new opposing force arrives to challenge him, keeping a delicate equilibrium on the battlefield.
お前のようなクズに怒りを感じることすら無駄か。
The problems begin when the polarity of the conflict breaks down. The higher the stakes climb, the less tension actually remains. Paradoxically, around the mid-story, some viewers might think, it seems nothing can threaten the hero anymore. The plot becomes too predictable and one-dimensional. Jin-Woo grows so powerful so quickly that genuine threats almost cease to exist. If a new opponent does appear, they are dispatched with a single swing of his sword or resolved by yet another convenient deus ex machina. The creators rarely allow the conflict to swing back the other way. There's never a sense that the hero could truly fail. By the laws of drama, after a rise, we need at least a temporary fall, a moment when it seems the hero might not succeed. In Solo Leveling, there are virtually no moments of defeat or despair. Jin-Woo experiences almost no losses and suffers no lasting injuries. His personal world is never shaken. His victories cost him neither serious wounds nor casualties among his loved ones. There is no genuine climactic crisis, no point of all is lost where he must choose or sacrifice something dear. As a result, by about the middle of the series, the intrigue diminishes. We already know that no matter what happens, he will overcome it.
In this way, Jin-Woo's rapid level jumps upset the balance of power and break the polarities of conflict. The opposite pole, the strength of the antagonists, stops being an equal partner in the drama. When the conflict's weight leans too heavily on the hero's side, the dramatic struggle dies down. What started as a gripping sequence of triumphs and crises gradually turns into a monotonous conveyor belt of victories. One battle follows another, dungeon after dungeon. But we no longer feel any risk for the protagonist. With no unexpected downturns or plot twists, the story lacks climax and catharsis. The tension that originally came from the play of polarities, like weak versus strong, evaporates because the hero effectively no longer has a worthy opposing force. Ultimately, the grand adventure risks devolving into a simple checklist of wins with few emotional highs or substantial drama supporting it. The contract with the viewer is an implicit agreement a story makes in its first act, establishing what the audience should expect going forward. As Vogler describes, the beginning of a film/anime sets the genre, tone, and central question, thereby promising the audience a certain kind of story. If later the narrative abruptly breaks those expectations, the audience will feel betrayed. Conversely, if the creators honor the promised tone and genre, viewers will gladly follow the story anywhere.
素手で勝てる気はしない。
In Solo Leveling, the contract with the viewer is established quite overtly. The early episodes make it clear that this is a fantasy, action, power fantasy with RPG elements. The tone is serious and at times dark, given the gruesome dungeon scenes, but overall focused on action spectacle and the hero's triumph. The central question can be framed as, how powerful will Sung Jin-Woo become, and will he be able to protect himself and those he cares about? The audience is promised a thrilling zero-to-hero story, and the series delivers exactly that.
Solo Leveling keeps its word to the viewer by providing an exhilarating power fantasy filled with non-stop battles, steady power-ups, and impressive animation. Indeed, as you watch, you experience genuine excitement and joy in the hero's victories, and you revel in the stylish combat, essentially receiving precisely the kind of enjoyment the opening promised. In this regard, the show deserves credit. The contract with the viewer is not broken, and Solo Leveling gives its audience the genre experience it signed up for.
ランクも低いな。
However, some viewers might have expected more thematic substance from such a flashy starting premise. The first act hinted at potentially interesting themes: human fragility, the cost of power, moral limits. Jin-Woo witnessed how other hunters' greed led to tragedy, for instance. One might have assumed the story would explore these questions more deeply as it progressed. But, as we have established, the anime largely sidestepped serious moral conflicts and stayed focused on action. Is this a breach of contract? Not exactly. Solo Leveling never explicitly promised deep philosophy. It positioned itself as an entertaining action romp. It's just that the potential for deeper ideas was left unrealized. In the end, the audience gets an honest entertainment product, but without the value added of a new insight. As noted in the review, the title fulfilled its contract with the viewer by promising a cool power fantasy and delivering it fully. At the same time, by analyzing the story more deeply, we understand it could have been much better if the authors had been driven not only by a desire to cater to basic fan service needs, but also by an ambition to tell a meaningful story, something that, unfortunately, did not happen. So, Solo Leveling certainly meets the baseline expectations of its audience, but it doesn't exceed them. The contract with the viewer in terms of genre thrills is upheld, yet the viewer is offered no unexpected depth behind the glossy facade, and that is an important consideration when assessing the series as a whole.
その中に我々の想像を超える
Solo Leveling makes heavy use of classic story archetypes, which makes its characters immediately recognizable, if not particularly deep. The main roles are distributed according to familiar patterns. We have the hero, a shadow, the antagonistic force, an unconventional mentor, and a few allies. The author relies on these archetypal masks of behavior to quickly construct the drama without need for excessive explanation. The audience can tell at a glance who's who in this adventure. Who is the hero, who represents his dark counterpart, who is a friend, and who might turn traitor. Hero. Sung Jin-Woo is the central hero, a sort of messianic chosen one with a unique fate. He fits the hero archetype to a T, and even goes through the classic hero's journey stages, call to adventure, trials, reward, etc., though mostly in a physical sense rather than a deeply emotional one. Jin-Woo is the archetypal protagonist who saves his world. His portrayal is straightforward and appealing for power fantasy fans who want an undefeatable main character to root for. The role of the opposing force, or shadow, in Solo Leveling is interesting. On one level, it's embodied by tangible enemies, monsters, dungeon bosses, supernatural entities that Jin-Woo must battle. On another level, Jin-Woo's own power becomes his literal shadow. A unique aspect of the system is that after a victory, Jin-Woo can dominate the shadows of his defeated foes, effectively raising an army of dark minions. The strongest of these, like Igris or Bear, reflect the hero himself, a dark side that has become subservient to him. Thus, the hero literally conquers his own darkness, subdues it, and wields it for good. This is archetypally compelling. The theme of man versus shadow is played out visually, without heavy-handed exposition. Every shadow Jin-Woo collects symbolizes overcoming another fear or obstacle, while also strengthening him, reminiscent of myths where heroes gain power from vanquished foes. The shadow archetype is executed effectively in solo leveling, albeit in a very gamified manner.
Instead of a traditional wise mentor guiding the hero, here we have the impersonal system itself. It gives Jin-Woo quests, teaches him through tough trials, often via pain and challenges, and rewards him for success. This is an unconventional interpretation of the mentor archetype, essentially a machine mentor. This twist underscores the hero's loneliness. He's being guided by a program rather than a human being. Nevertheless, the system fulfills the mentor's archetypal role as a guide. As Vogler notes, archetypes are masks of behavior, and here, the mentor mask is effectively worn by a holographic interface. Jin-Woo still receives advice and training, even if in the form of text alerts and penalties for failures. The story does have a guiding force helping the hero grow, even if it's an AI-like entity.
Allies. Among supporting characters, we see a few typical helpers. For example, there's a young healer girl who initially supports Jin-Woo and mends his wounds, and a senior tank ally who is genuinely happy to see Jin-Woo's growth. These characters are not complex, but they immediately evoked the intended associations: the friendly comrade you can trust, the teammate who has your back. Conversely, there's also an arrogant fellow hunter who's jealous of Jin-Woo's rise, fitting the archetype of a possible betrayer. Archetypes help establish these dynamics quickly. Even without elaborate backstories, we grasp who is the hero's loyal friend and who is the untrustworthy rival.
それだけでも十分だと思え。違うか?
Using familiar archetypal masks made solo leveling accessible and viscerally effective on a basic level. It's inherently satisfying to see the hero cross the threshold, battle the shadow, and return with the elixir. In Jin-Woo's case, new powers and resources to save his family. We enjoy these beats because they align with the timeless mythic formula. However, relying solely on archetypes without further development has a downside. Most of the secondary characters remain mere extras. They undergo no change, have no personal goals, and exist only to shine a spotlight on the hero. The author focused almost all attention on Jin-Woo, giving nearly no character arcs or even standout moments to others. Each supporting character is just a function, either to save, to betray, or to be saved. Tellingly, no supporting character has a significant impact on the plot. If you removed them, the story would hardly change at all. For instance, Jin-Woo's potential peers or foils, like other high-ranking hunters like Baek Yoon-ho or Cha Hae-in, appear only briefly. They basically show up, marvel at his power, and then exit the stage. Cha Hae-in, the sole female S-rank, could have been an interesting character, perhaps a moral compass or a competitor to challenge Jin-Woo, but she gets minimal focus. A hint of a romantic subplot with her is barely touched upon before it fizzles out. Jin-Woo is far too busy with his quests to pursue any romance. Other comrades from the first dungeon either die or simply vanish from the storyline without leaving a trace. Jin-Woo effectively has no real friends or team, only his silent shadow servants who obey without question. He has no living mentor either, just the mechanical system guiding him. This kind of simplification deprives the story of depth. We don't get to see varied perspectives or relationships that could further reveal the hero's character through interaction. Solo leveling, despite its archetypal flair, loses out on richness due to the flatness of its secondary cast. It's a somewhat old-fashioned approach, a lone wolf hero and cardboard cutout side characters, but it works at a rudimentary entertainment level. Archetypal plots do work, yet what's missing are nuances. The story plays with familiar masks and offers little beyond those.
俺が倒すよ。
David McKenna highlights the importance of reciprocal action in a screenplay. Every move the hero makes should trigger an almost immediate counter-move from the antagonist, and vice versa. This kind of dramatic tennis keeps tension high. Strike and counter-strike, action and reaction continually drive the story.
If the gap between an action and its response is too long, a scene can feel sluggish. In a well-crafted conflict, the enemy actively responds to the hero's successes. For instance, the hero gains a new power, and the antagonist promptly finds a way to counter it, raising the stakes again. In solo leveling, the execution of reciprocity is a mixed bag. To an extent, the very structure of the plot attempts this. Each time Jin-Woo wins, an even stronger foe appears. In other words, the world's system reacts to the hero's growth. But this reaction is impersonal. Monsters aren't plotting revenge, they just happen to be stronger by level. In fact, throughout 2 seasons, there is almost no singular antagonist who deliberately counters Jin-Woo's actions over time. The hero mostly fights faceless creatures or opponents who had no prior awareness of him. Thus, the dramatic exchange of blows simplifies into a formula. Hero strikes, hero wins. Adversaries seldom force Jin-Woo onto the defensive or make him change strategy. Usually, he either starts out stronger or adapts so quickly that he dominates before the enemy can gain any ground. A clear example of lack of reciprocal action is the absence of any serious counterattack from antagonists by the mid-story. Once Jin-Woo powers up to the top tiers, foes are no longer capable of injuring him or pushing him to a corner. Battles turn into a one-sided affair, where monsters serve merely as targets for the hero to showcase his latest ability. In the beginning, during the double dungeon, every move the heroes made was immediately punished by the statue's deadly response. There was that reciprocity. But as the story progresses, such dramatic back-and-forth exchanges virtually vanish. Often a conflict is resolved almost as soon as it begins. A new boss appears, and Jin-Woo annihilates it in an instant. Antagonists seldom get the chance to land a meaningful hit in return, which means the hero rarely finds himself in real danger. The review points out that threats, when they do arise, are handled with one swing of the sword or another deus ex machina. This indicates too large a distance between blow and counterblow. Instead of a dynamic volley, we effectively see a unilateral attack. Admittedly, in the early stages, the series compensates with spectacle. Quick fights don't drag long enough to bore us. But over time, the lack of a strong pushback from the villains reduces the sense of risk and the dramatic weight of the fights. The viewer stops wondering, what if the hero loses? Because experience tells us the enemy will fail to truly respond to Jin-Woo's onslaught.
強くならないと生き抜くことなんかできない。
One could say that solo leveling is missing a classic main antagonist who grows in power alongside the hero or schemes against him, creating an ongoing sense of looming danger. Only towards the end of Season 2 does a potentially interesting counterforce appear. Hints of higher beings, the monarchs behind the system, who might eventually challenge Jin-Woo, but that lies beyond the current scope. Up through Season 2, the conflict in solo leveling is not so much a duel as it is largely one-sided. The principle of reciprocal action is underutilized, making some confrontations feel less suspenseful than they could be. In more mature narratives, the hero's every step immediately provokes a response from the antagonist, whereas here, the hero acts with near impunity, which impoverishes the drama. As a takeaway from this analysis, had the author shortened the distance between action and reaction by giving Jin-Woo more immediate and formidable counterblows from adversaries, the story's tension would likely have been stronger.
この転職クエストは経過時間が鍵だ。
Solo leveling is an intriguing case study. On one hand, it's a thrilling piece of entertainment that skillfully plays to genre expectations. On the other, it exemplifies rather shallow storytelling when examined closely. Evaluating it through Vogler and McKenna's tools reveals the show's key strengths and weaknesses. The series undoubtedly fulfills its basic promise to the audience. It delivers the fantasy of unstoppable power and victory that makes viewers' hearts race. The simple yet potent recipe of from weakling to overpowered works. Viewers get the expected rush, the heroic catharsis, and flashy animated battles. The archetypal framework of solo leveling made it accessible. It's easy to root for the invincible protagonist, to recognize the allies and enemies, and to enjoy the familiar beats of the hero crossing thresholds, dueling the shadow, and obtaining the elixir to save his family. It's no surprise the series became a phenomenon of its time.
However, the deeper analysis shows that beneath the shiny wrapping, there's a lack of substance. The proclaimed theme, ironically the story's very spine, turned out to be fragile and does not truly drive the plot. The hero's internal journey stalled almost as soon as it began. Jin-Woo evolved physically, but hardly at all emotionally. He never faces moral crossroads or temptations. His human desires are quickly satisfied, and thereafter his motivation grows hazy. The story's conflict lost its polarity. When the hero overwhelmingly dominates, there is no equally strong dark force to oppose him, and the drama loses tension. The contract with the viewer regarding genre and action was honored, but the show never aimed higher. It doesn't offer any novel ideas or emotional depth behind the spectacle. The character archetypes were utilized effectively for quick understanding, yet the supporting characters are too simplistic and contribute little, leaving the narrative without enriching subplots or relationships. Finally, the execution of reciprocal action is weak. Antagonists seldom return the volley, meaning conflicts are simplified and some dramatic fire is lost in the process.
Solo leveling can be seen as a dazzling yet superficial hero's journey. It's not an epic in the full sense, but rather an exciting genre ride that demonstrates how even a not-so-well-written story can captivate a mass audience on sheer premise and momentum. Our analysis has shown that even in a pop culture phenomenon, there is room for critical reflection and improvement. For future works in this vein, the dissection serves as a lesson. A truly strong story needs not only flashy victories, but also a clear theme, well-defined character desires, and a genuine inner evolution for the hero. Only then will a hero's journey contain both exhilarating triumphs and meaningful lessons. Solo leveling remains a telling example of a contemporary power fantasy. It's exhilarating and empowering, but ultimately one that leaves us without a deep emotional takeaway. It fulfilled our hidden wish for strength, but it did not address the question of at what cost.